The desert was endless, stretching in every direction like a sea of gold. The sun burned the ground with fire, and the air shimmered with heat. Every creature that entered these lands feared the storm that lived within the sand. The people of the desert believed the dunes carried death, swallowing anyone who dared to resist on this cruel land. A young alien girl walked with her tribe, her steps weak, her body shaking. Her skin was pale from the heat, her breath shallow, her lips cracked like broken stone. The tribe moved fast, leaving her behind. For they knew weakness had no place. In the desert, if one fell, the sands would take them, and no one would waste water or time to save them. She stumbled, her knees hitting the burning ground. Her eyes lifted to the sky, where the sun looked like a giant blade cutting into her. Her voice broke into a whisper, "Please, not here." But no one turned to listen. The tribe walked on, their figures shrinking against the dunes. Her chest heaved one last time, then stopped. Her body lay still, half buried as the wind pushed the sand over her. The desert had claimed her breath, but fate had other plans. A human traveler crossed the desert alone, his clothes torn by the sandstorm. His face hard with determination. He had come from far away, searching for ruins that few believed were real. Yet when his eyes caught the faint outline of a body sinking into the sands, he stopped. He ran forward, his boots sinking, his hands pulling away the hot grains from her face. What he found was not bones, but a girl, young and fragile, her chest silent. Her people had abandoned her to die, but he refused to let the desert win. He dropped to his knees. Brushing more sand away, her skin was cold, though the air was fire, her lips blue, her body limp. He pressed 2 fingers against her neck, no heartbeat. For a moment, the weight of silence crushed him. The desert whispered that he was too late, but the human clenched his jaw and whispered back, "No. Not today." He placed his hands on her chest and began to push. Hard and steady. 1, 2, 3. His arms burned, but he did not stop. Sweat rolled down his face, stinging his eyes, but he kept pressing. "Breathe," he muttered. "You will not die here." The desert wind howled, as if mocking his fight against death itself. Each push felt useless, but his will was iron. He refused to let her go. Time blurred, the world shrinking to the sound of his desperate rhythm. Push after push, his breath ragged, his heart pounding with fury. He leaned down, pressing his lips to hers, forcing air into her lungs. Then he pulled back, pressing again, his voice rough. "Come on. Fight." But still she lay still, the sand shifting over her body as if eager to swallow her whole. The human gritted his teeth, rage burning through exhaustion. He thought of all the lives he had seen lost to cruelty, to war, to storms that cared nothing for mercy. He thought of how easily people abandoned those too weak to walk. And he shouted at the desert itself, "You will not take her." His hands slammed against her chest again and again. Every strike, a promise. The desert gave no answer but silence. And silence was heavier than any blade. But then, just as his strength began to fade, sound broke through. A faint gasp, small as a whisper, but real. Her chest moved, a weak rise. Then a shaky fall. The human froze. His breath caught, then leaned close. Her eyes fluttered, half closed, her lips trembling with a sound that was not yet words. She was alive. He pressed his forehead against hers, relief flooding his tired body. "You're back," he whispered, voice cracking. "I told you I wouldn't let you go." The desert wind slowed for a moment, as if even it was surprised. The girl's breath was shallow, her life fragile as a candle in a storm, but she was breathing, and that was enough. He pulled her into his arms, lifting her small frame from the sand. Her body was weightless, like something already half gone, but he held her tight. refusing to let the desert claim her again behind them. The tribe's shadows faded beyond the horizon, never looking back. But the human did not care. He had seen death in her stillness, and life in her gasp. And now he carried her, step by step, against the burning wind. The desert was endless, the sun merciless, but he walked on. Holding her close, for he had already made his choice, the sands would not have her. Not while his will remained. The human carried the alien girl through the desert, his arms aching, his lips dry. The storm had quieted, but the dunes still shifted. Like waves, ready to bury both of them, her breathing was faint, her chest rising only a little, each gasp like a battle against death. Every step he took felt heavier, yet he did not stop. He could not stop. He found a small rock shelter where the wind passed less fiercely. He laid her down carefully, brushing sand from her face. Her eyelids trembled, but her eyes stayed shut. Her heart was weak, her pulse barely there. The desert had taken almost everything from her. He opened his small pack, taking out his last flask of water. The liquid inside was no more than a mouthful, but he held it to her lips. "Drink," he whispered, tilting her head back, letting a few drops fall into her mouth. Her throat twitched, a soft sound escaping her, and he knew she had swallowed. It was not enough, but it was something. His own lips were cracked, his body screaming for water. But he gave all to her. He had chosen her life mattered more than his comfort. Yet water alone was not enough. Her breaths were still shallow. Her heart still weak. He had to keep fighting for her. He pressed his hands again over her chest, pushing hard and steady. 1, 2, 3. His arms moved like hammers against the silence of her body. The rhythm echoed in his mind, each push a demand for life. Sweat mixed with sand on his skin. But he did not care. The desert whispered for him to stop, but his will was stronger as he worked. He thought of his own people, of Earth far away. Humans had always been stubborn, always refusing to bow before nature. It was this defiance that had carried them across stars, into places where others said no life could be. And now it was the same defiance keeping his hands moving. He was human. And he would not surrender to the sands. The girl's body jerked suddenly, her chest rising with a sharp gasp. Her eyes flickered open, only for a moment, glowing faint under the shadow of the rock. A faint whisper came from her cracked lips. "Why? Why do you fight? For me?" Her words were weak, but they cut into his heart. He leaned close, answering in a voice rough from thirst, because no one deserves to be left behind. Her eyes rolled shut again, her body falling back into stillness, but he knew she was there. Clinging to life, it gave him more strength, more reason to keep her safe. Yet the desert was not the only enemy. The sound of drums reached him across the dunes, low and heavy. He froze, listening. The tribe had returned. They came in the distance. Shadows moving against the horizon, carrying weapons of bone and stone. Their steps were fast, their voices sharp with anger. They did not see a miracle in her survival. They saw a curse, a violation of their laws. To them, the desert's will had been broken, and someone had to pay. The human looked at the girl, lying weak beneath the rock, and he made his choice. He stood tall, placing himself between her and the approaching warriors. His body was tired, his water gone, his strength low, but his will burned like fire. He gripped a piece of metal scrap he carried from the ruins, shaping it like a blade. It was not much, but in his hands it was enough. The warriors reached the base of the dune, their eyes wide with fury. They shouted in their coats, they shouted in their tongue, calling him a thief of death, a breaker of fate. He did not move, his shadow standing firm over the girl. "You will not take her," he growled, his voice breaking against the wind. They charged, spears raised, their feet thundering on the sand. The first warrior struck, and he swung his scrap metal blade. Sparks flying as it clashed against bone. Pain shot through his arm, but he forced the warrior back. Another came from the side, spear tip cutting into his shoulder. Blood ran, but he stood firm, his grip tightening every strike, every block. Every step back was fueled by a single thought: she must live. The girl stirred faintly, her eyes opening again. Blurry and weak, she saw him, standing alone, bleeding. Fighting against her own people, her lips trembled with silent words. But her voice was lost to the wind. The human did not see her gaze, but he felt her presence like a weight behind him. He fought harder, his body screaming, yet his spirit refusing to fall. The desert roared with the sound of clashing blades and broken cries. The sands tried to pull them all under, but he did not yield. Even when he stumbled, even when his breath grew short, his will remained. The warrior circled him, but he stood like a wall. His voice rang out, sharp and full of fire. If the desert wants her, it must take me first. The human's arms shook, blood running down his sleeve, his chest heaving with every breath. The alien warriors circled him, their eyes burning with rage, their spears gleaming in the desert light. He stood like a wall, refusing to step aside. His blade of broken metal gripped tight. Behind him, the alien girl lay against the rock, her breath shallow, her eyes barely open. She watched him fight, her vision blurred by heat and sand. One warrior rushed forward, spear raised high, the human twisted, his blade clashing with bone, sparks flying as he forced the weapon aside. The impact rattled his bones, but he pushed back, his roar echoing against the dunes. The warrior stumbled, shocked at his strength. The others hesitated for a moment, but their fury soon drowned their fear. The human's body screamed for rest, but his will burned brighter. Every strike was for her. Every block a promise that he would not let the desert steal her again. The warriors lunged together, three at once. Spears sliced the air, but he ducked, blocked, and countered with desperate strength. The sand beneath them turned red. Yet he stood firm. Then, from behind, a sharp cry rose. The girl's lips parted, her weak voice breaking through the chaos. "Stop, please." The sound made the warriors freeze for an instant, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had left her to the desert. Yet here she was, alive, breathing, speaking to them. It was unnatural, a curse, a defiance against the will of the sands, but to the human, it was a miracle. Her voice gave him strength, her words pulling fire into his weary muscles. He pushed forward, striking one warrior to the ground, his blade pressing against another's spear until it snapped. The tribe pulled back, their leader raising a hand to call them off. Their eyes were no longer filled with only rage, but with fear. The human turned, kneeling by her side. Her breaths were weak, but steady now, her chest rising with fragile rhythm. He touched her cheek, his voice rough. "You are alive. You are still." Here, her eyes met his, glowing faintly with tears. "Why? Why do you fight for me?" she whispered, her voice like wind over dry leaves. He did not answer at once, his chest heavy, his throat burning from thirst. He looked at her, remembering how her body had been still, how her last breath had already left her, and how his hands had refused to stop, how his will had pulled her back. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady despite the storm around them. "Because life is worth fighting for. Because no one should be abandoned." Her lips trembled, her eyes softening. But before she could speak again, the tribe leader stepped forward. His face was carved with fury, his voice sharp like a blade. She was chosen by the sands. She was taken, and you broke the will of the desert. The tribe shouted in agreement, their spears striking the ground, dust rising around them. The leader raised his weapon, pointing it at the human. "You are cursed now, outsider. You both are. The girl's body tensed with fear, her weak hands clutching at the human sleeve. He looked down at her, then back at the tribe, his eyes blazing. "If protecting her is a curse," he said, his voice deep and unyielding, "then I will carry it gladly." The leader's face darkened, his eyes narrowing with hatred, but he gave no signal to attack. Not yet. For even he had seen something that unsettled him. The girl's breath returned when the human refused to let her go. The tribe stepped back slowly, their drums fading into silence. They would not forget this, and they would not forgive. But, for now, they turned away, their shadows melting into the horizon, leaving only threats in the air. The human did not lower his guard until they were gone. Then he collapsed beside the girl, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. She looked at him with weak eyes, her lips trembling as she whispered, "I felt the darkness take me. I was gone, but you pulled me back." His hand tightened gently around hers, his voice soft but certain, "Then you will never be alone again. As long as I breathe, you will live." Her tears slipped down her face, soaking into the sand. She had been abandoned by her own people, yet this stranger had given her life again. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them, fragile but unbreakable. The desert around them was still harsh, the sun still merciless, but she was no longer fading. Her breath had returned, her heart weak but alive, and with each moment, her bond with him grew stronger. She did not know why he had chosen to fight for her, but she knew one truth. Her life now belonged to the will of a human who refused to bow to death. As the night crept over the dunes, the human wrapped her in his cloak, shielding her from the cold wind. The stars lit the sky, countless and bright. Like eyes watching from above, she drifted into sleep, her breathing steady, her heartbeat fragile but real. The human stayed awake, his blade resting by his side. His eyes scanning the dunes, he knew the tribe would return. He knew the desert would not forgive, but none of it mattered. For she had taken her breath again, and he had promised himself that nothing, not sand, not storm, not tribe would take it from her ever again. The desert night was cold. The wind sharp like knives. The human sat awake by the small fire, his cloak wrapped around the alien girl. Her breath rose and fell slowly, her chest weak but steady. Every crackle of the fire gave him hope, yet every whisper of the wind carried danger. He knew the tribe would not forgive. They had seen her draw breath again, and to them it was not life but defiance, not a gift but a curse. The girl stirred, her eyes opening faintly under the starlight. Her voice was soft, breaking like dry twigs. "They will not stop. They will hunt us." The human looked at her, his face calm but his jaw tight. "Then let them come," he said, his voice steady as stone. "I will not give you back to them." Her eyes watered, not only from weakness but from fear. She had seen her people's cruelty. She had felt their abandonment. But in the human's words, she heard something new. Something her own tribe never gave her: protection. By dawn, the fire was gone, and the heat of the sun returned with fury. The human lifted her gently, carrying her across the dunes. Her arms were too weak to hold on, but she pressed her face against his chest. Her body felt light, fragile, like a shadow carried by the wind, still. He held her as if she were the only treasure in the desert. The dunes stretched endlessly. No sign of water, no sign of shelter. His lips cracked with thirst, his steps heavy, but he did not slow, for he knew if he faltered, she would not survive. Every grain of sand seemed to fight against him. Yet his will pushed forward. Then, faint in the distance, came the sound of drums. The rhythm rolled across the desert like thunder. The girl's eyes widened with fear, her voice trembling. "They are coming. My people. They will take me." The human turned his head toward the sound, his grip tightening on her. His eyes burned with fire. They abandoned you once. They will not touch you again. Shadows appeared on the horizon, many figures marching over. The dunes' spears gleamed under the sun. Banners of bone and hide waved in the hot wind. The tribe had returned, stronger in number. Their steps fast and merciless. The human placed the girl down gently behind a dune, his hand brushing her hair. Back, stay low. No matter what happens, do not give up. Her small hand clutched his wrist, her voice breaking, "They will kill you." He leaned close, his eyes locked on hers. "If they kill me, it will be after I protect you. Remember that." He rose. To his feet, his broken blade in hand, his shadow tall against the burning sand. The tribe spread around him, warriors forming a circle, their leader stepping forward. The leader's voice roared across the dunes. "She belongs to the desert. You had no right to steal her from death." The human stood firm, sweat running down his face, his chest rising with heavy breaths. "She belongs to life," he shouted back, his voice carrying like thunder. "And I will not give her back." To the sands, the warriors closed in, their drums pounding, their feet shaking the ground. The human gripped his blade tighter, his body tense but unyielding. Every muscle ached, but his spirit refused to bend. The first warrior charged, spear thrust forward. The human sidestepped, his blade striking, sparks flying as the spear shattered. Another warrior swung from behind, but the human blocked, his arm burning with pain. He countered, driving the warrior back, his roar echoing in the hot air behind. The dune, the girl's heart pounded as she watched. She wanted to scream, to stand, to fight, but her body betrayed her. Her people were not just hunting her, they were hunting him, and all because he had saved her, all because he refused to. Let her die. The battle grew fierce, sand rising with every clash. The human was outnumbered. Yet he fought with a strength that came not from his body, but from his will. Every strike was for her. Every step forward a shield between her and the tribe. The leader raised his spear. Shouting for the warriors to finish it, they rushed together, their weapons striking from every side. The human blocked one, dodged another. But a spear cut across his ribs, blood spilling hot and red. He stumbled, his knee hitting the sand, his breath ragged. The warriors raised their weapons to strike again, but in that moment, the girl's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and desperate. "Stop. He is not your enemy." The tribe froze for a heartbeat, shocked to hear her speak with such strength. Her eyes burned with tears, her weak body trembling as she tried to rise. "He gave me life when you gave me death," she cried. "He is the reason I breathe." The human turned, his eyes meeting hers, and in that instant, strength surged back into his limbs. He pushed himself up, his blade flashing under the sun, striking the nearest spear aside. The warriors stepped back, their certainty shaken. The tribe had left her to die, yet here she stood, alive, breathing, and defying them. The leader's face twisted with anger, his voice rising like thunder. "She is cursed. And now you share her curse." But even he could not hide the fear in his eyes. For the girl's breath had returned, and the human's defiance was unbroken. The desert itself seemed to pause, the wind still, the sands waiting. The fight was not yet over, but the human had proven one truth: the tribe could hunt them. The desert could curse them, but nothing could make him surrender her life. The desert was quiet after the tribe pulled back, their shadows fading beyond the dunes. The human stood bleeding, his chest rising and falling, his blade hanging loose in his hand. He turned to the alien girl, who struggled to sit, her face pale, her breaths shallow but steady. For a moment their eyes met, and in that silence something stronger than words passed between them. They were no longer strangers, no longer alone against the desert. They were bound by survival, by defiance, by a life stolen back from death. He knelt beside her, pressing a cloth against his wound, his face calm despite the pain. "You must rest," he said gently. His voice rough from the fight. She shook her head weakly, her voice trembling. "They will return. They will never stop." He placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip steady. "Then we will be ready when they do." Her eyes widened, not in fear, but in disbelief. No one had ever spoken of we when it came to her life. The night came cold, and he built a fire from dry roots and broken branches. He wrapped his cloak tighter around her, keeping her warm against the wind. She watched him work, her heart pulling with something strange and heavy. This human gave without asking, fought without fear, and stayed when her own people walked away. When the fire crackled, he sat beside her, his voice calm but firm. "If we are to survive, you must learn." Her weak eyes blinked, confusion clear. "Learn?" He nodded, pointing at the flames, fire, shelter, finding water. "The desert is cruel, but we can fight it together." The next day, he began teaching her. He showed her how to search for shade under rocks, how to dig for damp sand where water sometimes hid. Her small hands trembled as she tried, her body weak. But he guided her patiently. "Again," he said, when she failed, "don't give up." She looked at him, her lips pressing tight. Then tried again. This time, when a drop of water formed in the sand, her eyes lit with surprise, a tiny drop. But it was victory. He smiled faintly, pride shining in his tired eyes. "You see? The desert doesn't own you," he said softly. "It only tests you." Her heart tightened at his words, a warmth growing where only fear had lived before. As the days passed, her strength grew slowly. She learned to keep the fire alive, too. Listen to the wind for signs of a storm. He showed her how to bind wounds, how to sharpen a stone for defense. Every lesson was survival, but it was also trust. And with each passing moment, she felt herself becoming something her tribe had never allowed her to be: strong. At night, when the stars covered the sky like rivers of light, they spoke in quiet voices. She told him of her people, of how the desert ruled every law, every choice, how weakness was punished with abandonment, how death was called a gift. Her voice broke as she whispered, "I was nothing to them, just a burden to be given to the sands." The human listened, his jaw tight, his hands clenched. Finally, he said, his voice low but fierce, "To me, you are not nothing. You are life. And I will fight for that life until my last breath." Her eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but of something new. Her hand shook as she reached for his, her voice small. "When I was under the sand, I felt my soul leaving, but your hands pulled me back." He squeezed her hand gently, his voice steady. "And I will keep pulling you back, again and again." The desert wind blew around them, but for the first time, she did not feel afraid. One night, as the fire burned low, a storm swept over the dunes. The wind screamed, sand cutting like knives. The girl clung to him, her body shaking, but he held her close, shielding her with his own body. "Do not fear," he whispered against. "The storm, the sands, will not take you while I stand." She buried her face against his chest, hearing the steady beat of his heart. The sound was strong, alive, and it became her anchor. When the storm passed, they emerged, covered in dust. But alive, she looked up at him, her eyes shining with something unspoken. Every trial they faced, every breath she took, bound them closer. No tribe, no curse, no storm could change what was being forged in the desert. A bond not of blood, but of will, of survival, of defiance. The desert had tried to take her, the tribe had tried to erase her, but the human had given her something neither the sands nor her people ever could hope. And now, as dawn painted the dunes gold, she whispered the words that echoed in his heart. You gave me back my life. Now it belongs to us both. Asterisk, the desert sky turned red as the sun began to sink. The human and the alien girl stood at the edge of a wide hollow in the dunes, here, half buried beneath the sand. Rose ancient stone ruins, jagged towers broken. By time, it was the only place where they could hide. The only place where the tribe's spears could not surround them fully. But even here, danger was coming. The girl clutched his arm, her voice unsteady. They will find us. They always do. The human's gaze swept across the ruins, his jaw set. Then this is where we make our stand. Her heart trembled at his words, but when she looked into his eyes, she saw no fear, only fire. It gave her strength, even. When her body still felt weak, they found shelter in a broken arch, where carved symbols glowed faintly under the last light. The girl traced them with her fingers, whispering, "These stones are older than my people, older than the desert itself." But before she could wonder more, the sound reached them drums, heavy and fast, rolling over the dunes like thunder. The tribe had come. The human tightened his grip on his broken blade, his muscles aching, but ready? The girl's hand shook, her breath uneven. They will kill you. They will kill us both. He placed his hand over hers, firm and steady. Not while I draw breath. The first shadows appeared on the ridge, dozens of warriors carrying spears and torches. Their leader stepped forward, his voice booming, "Outsider, the sands claim what you stole. Give her back or be buried with her." The human stood tall against the ruined wall, his voice sharp and fearless. "If the sands want her, they will have to go through me." The tribe roared with anger, their spears shaking the air. Then, like a wave of fire, they charged. The battle was fury and dust. The human swung his blade, blocking the first spear. Sparks flying as metal struck bone, he countered, forcing one warrior back, then dodged another strike that scraped across his arm. Blood ran, but he did not fall. He moved like a wall of stone, unbroken despite the storm around him. Every strike he made was fueled by one thought: she must live. The girl crouched in the shadow of the arch, her heart racing. She wanted to scream, to run, to fight, but her body was weak. Still, she could not look away from him. The human bled, stumbled, yet rose again, his eyes burning with defiance. The tribe threw themselves at him, but he pushed them back, step by step, never yielding ground. The leader raised his spear high, his voice cutting through the battle. "Enough. Bring him down." 3 warriors attacked at once, their spears thrusting from every side. The human blocked one, but another cut deep across his ribs, the pain sharp as fire. He gritted his teeth, refusing to fall. The girl cried out, her voice breaking, "No." Her cry reached him like a spark in the dark, pulling him back from the edge. He swung his blade with a roar, striking the nearest warrior down, forcing the others back. But he was slowing, his breaths ragged, his body heavy. The tribe pressed closer, their spears ready to end it. The girl's heart broke as she watched, her tears blinding her. She could not stay hidden any longer. Weak as she was, she forced herself to her feet, her body trembling, her voice rising. "Stop," she shouted, her words sharp against the desert air. The warriors froze, turning toward her, their eyes wide. She stood in the arch, swaying but unbroken, her voice fierce. "I am not cursed. I am alive." Because of him, the human turned, his chest heaving, his eyes locking on her. In her gaze he saw no weakness, no fear, only strength. Born from his will given to her, the tribe murmured, shaken by her words, for no one had ever defied the desert's law so openly. The leader snarled, rage twisting his face. "Silence. You should not live." But the girl stepped forward, her hand gripping a fallen spear, her voice steady. "I live because he fought for me. And now I will fight for him. She stumbled, but raised the spear. Her body trembling, yet her spirit strong. The human's heart swelled with fierce pride, his bloodied hand tightening on his blade. Together they stood, side by side, against. The tribe, the warriors, hesitated, for in the desert's eyes, this was no curse. This was defiance, pure and unyielding. The leader roared in fury. Ordering the attack, the warriors rushed again, but this time the girl thrust her spear, clumsy. Yet brave, forcing one back, the humans struck another down, their movements flowing together. Weak and strong, broken yet unbreakable. The ruins shook with the sound of their battle, the desert winds screaming around them, and in that chaos, one truth blazed clear. They would not surrender, not to the tribe, not to the desert, not to death itself. The human's voice rang out like thunder as he struck. We live. We live because we choose to fight. The girl echoed him, her voice raw but strong. We live. Their words cut deeper than any blade, shaking the hearts of all who heard. The tribe faltered, their charge slowing, their eyes filled with doubt. For in the heart of the desert, where life was never meant to return, two lives stood together. Burning brighter than the sun, the last stand had begun. And the desert itself seemed to hold its breath. The ruins shook with the roar of battle. The tribe's warriors circled, their spears flashing in the fading sun. The human stood bloodied, but unbroken, his blade heavy in his hand. Beside him, the alien girl leaned on a spear, her body weak, but her spirit blazing. Together they faced the desert's judgment. Together they defied death itself. The tribe charged again, their cries echoing through the dunes. The human struck one aside, his arm burning with pain. The girl thrust her spear forward, clumsy but fierce, her voice rising in a cry that cut through fear. Her people had abandoned her. Yet here she was, standing not as prey, but as fighter. The warriors faltered, uncertain, their steps slowing. For they had never seen one return from the sands, and never seen her fight against them. The leader roared in anger, his voice cracking. She should not breathe, should not live. He hurled his spear with deadly force. The girl's eyes widened as it flew toward her. But the human stepped in front, the weapon striking across his shoulder, blood spraying red against the stones. He staggered but did not fall, his voice rising like thunder. You will not take her again. The tribe froze. Their eyes locked on him. He bled, he shook, yet he still stood. The girl rushed to his side, her small hands pressing against his wound, tears streaming down her cheeks. Why? She whispered, her voice breaking. Why do you keep fighting for me? He looked at her with pain and pride in his eyes, his words soft but strong, because life matters. Your life matters. And I will never stop fighting for it. Her heart burned with his words, and for the first time in her life, she believed them. She turned to her tribe, raising her voice so all could hear. You left me to die. You gave me to the sands, but I live because of him. The warriors shifted uneasily, their eyes filled with doubt. The leader growled, fury twisting his face. You are cursed. Both of you are cursed, but her voice cut through him like a blade. No. We are free. Silence spread across the ruins, heavy as the desert night. The warriors lowered their spears, their anger fading into confusion. Some turned their eyes away, unable to face her defiance. For deep inside, they knew she spoke the truth. The desert had taken her breath, but a human's will had given it back. And that was something even the sands could not deny. The leader roared again, lifting another spear, but no warrior followed him. They stayed still, their faces grim, their hearts shaken. Alone he stepped forward, his voice full of rage. Then I will end this myself. He charged at the human, spear ready to strike. The girl cried out. Stepping forward with her own weapon, the human moved too, his blade rising. Together they met the leader's fury, steel and bone clashing with fire and will. The fight was short. But fierce, the leader struck with wild rage, but the human blocked, his body screaming in pain. The girl thrust her spear, striking the leader's side. He stumbled, his cry of anger breaking into a gasp. The human's blade swept across, knocking the spear from his hands. The leader fell to his knees, beaten, his eyes wide with shock. The warriors behind him lowered their heads. Silence filling the air, the human stood over him, blade raised. His chest heaving. For a moment, the desert itself seemed to wait. But then he lowered the weapon, his voice firm but calm. No more death. Not today. He turned to the girl, his hand reaching for hers. Her eyes filled with tears. But this time they were not of fear. She took his hand. Her voice soft but steady. You gave me back my life. Now it belongs to us both, the tribe. Watched in silence as the two stood together, hand in hand, the desert wind blew around them, carrying not the sound of drums, but of quiet surrender. The warriors turned away one by one, leaving their fallen leader. They had no words. No power to fight against what they had seen, for the desert had been defied, and life had won. When night fell, the ruins glowed under the stars. The girl leaned against the human, her head resting on his shoulder. Her breath was steady, her heart alive, her spirit free. The human wrapped his arm around her, his voice low, but sure. We are not cursed. We are proof that even the sands cannot take life when will refuses to break. She closed her eyes, a small smile on her lips. As long as you breathe, I will live. Together they sat beneath the endless sky, the desert that once tried. To claim her now carried the story of defiance. The sands had taken her last breath, but a human's will had pulled her back from death. And now, they walked forward, not as hunted or cursed, but as two lives bound beyond fear, beyond despair, beyond the desert itself.